So, so I really believe that there are moments in your life, that there are circumstances, there are things that you go through in your life that define who you are for the rest of your life. Um, and recognizing those when they come around um, is not always easy to do. And sometimes you don't see the full picture until God's already put the rest of it together. Um, there are defining moments in our life, and mine is no different. Um, I grew up in this church. I grew up at ABT. It was probably the second place I was ever taken. In fact, I know it was from the hospital. My house was probably the first place, and then this building was more than likely the second place I was ever taken. My mom actually went into labor with me in this building. So to say that I'm a church kid is an understatement. And growing up here, in I guess the culture that was ABT, and in the way that it was back then, my mom was well known by most of the congregation. She sang on the stage all the time. My dad was, and both of them still are, very well known as kind of staple people of the church. And so there was a bit of an expectation for me, being Patty Knight's son and being Larry Knight's son, that I had to. And there was never any pressure put on me by my parents, not by any stretch, but there was definitely this feeling that I had an expectation to meet, just simply because of the family I was born into, and my family's awesome. I could not have picked a better set of parents. But for me, getting my head around my faith, seeing the difference between just walking through this building and doing what I'm supposed to do and being the Christian that I'm supposed to be, is something that I really had to have the rug pulled out from under me to really realize what I was doing, because I was the biggest fake walking around this building. I got saved when I was supposedly, I guess I got saved when I was 7. At my house, my mom led me to the Lord, and I don't really remember it though. And she said that the first thing that I said was that I was concerned for my sister. As my little sister, is she going to die and go to hell? And so I was really concerned about other people's salvation and other people's souls, even at that early age. But I got baptized, I think, a year later. I think I was 8. My friend and I, my best friend at the time, we got baptized at the same time in the temple. There's a picture of us with our toes sticking out of the water up there at the exact same time, and everything, and it was cool. But it never really was my faith. I was doing it, I think, because at the time, because it's what I was supposed to do, because I grew up here and this is just what you did. I don't know if I truly had my head around it. I don't really remember a feeling of brokenness and of really understanding why I need a Savior. I'm told that I did, but it really didn't resonate with me until I was older. And I think that's why by the time I got in middle school and in high school, I was just a big fake walking around. I knew how to play the Christian game. I knew what to say, who to say, how to say it, how to walk through the room, how, all of those things. I could play the part, and in some ways, I should be given an Oscar for some of the performances that I was able to put on, and it makes me sick thinking back about it. Because by the time I got in high school, this building, this place was really just my social gathering. I didn't come here because I was in love with Jesus and I wanted to get to know him better. I came here because this is where my closest friends were, to hang out with them. I came here because there was a girl I was trying to get with. I came here also because of who I was supposed to be, and that a lot of this place was wrapped up in my identity. My identity was based more in all of the wrong things of church instead of all of the right things of what a relationship with Jesus really means. And because I wasn't basing my life on truly following Jesus, I was following, the part that I was supposed to be playing. When I landed into, I guess, what I would call the defining story, defining relationship, which ultimately led to a defining moment in the course of my life. The reason that things fell apart is because it wasn't based in faith in Jesus and in the right ways, not by any stretch. When I was a junior, in high school. I started dating a majorette, baton twirler, that was in the band. I was in the marching band, and she was probably the first like really serious girlfriend that I had, and man, I just poured everything into that relationship, emotionally, physically, and my whole world was based around her. We dated for 2.5 years, and there were so many things there that she came to church with me and everything, but again, it was just the social thing. It was the status symbol. I was able to walk into church with a hot girl on my arm, and I walked around cocky and arrogant, and I don't think I was necessarily fooling anybody in that respect, because we were not, we did not stay morally pure in that relationship at all. Most of that relationship was based on the physical, on sex, and on stuff that I knew I shouldn't be doing. I knew I shouldn't have been doing that. And because of that, because it was based in that, and because of what that does to a relationship and to you emotionally, spiritually, and physically, it was an attachment there that was so deep and so deeply ingrained that the fallout from that relationship still, in some ways, haunts me to this day. And so we dated for about 2.5 years. I actually proposed to her. We were engaged, which was so stupid. At 19, when I was in college, I came home every weekend from Pittsburgh. I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and when I came home every weekend, I said that my reason to come home was to work, but it really wasn't. My reason to come home was to see my girlfriend and to do the things that we were doing that we shouldn't have been doing physically. And there was a time in May of 99. No, it was March. I'm sorry. March of 99, and I proposed to her, actually in this building, at in this church. I proposed to her. I was 19. She was about to graduate high school. So dumb. I sang to her with the guys that I was singing in a quartet, more like a boy band, but we sang at the church all the time with, it was 3 of my best friends at the time, and I sang a song to her. I sang "God Must Spend a Little More Time on You" by NSYNC, and we sang it, and then I proposed to her, and it was cool and all of that, but I was so not ready for that, and I so regret a lot of that, because I wasted so much time and effort on something that God's hand was clearly not in. And so, funny enough, after that comes to the defining moment, I suppose. I went on a trip to Florida with her and my best friend, and I have no idea why my parents let me go on this. At the same time, they aren't stupid, and they probably knew what was going on, but I was 19, and in some ways, they were just kind of letting me go, I think, to let me figure it out. And for whatever reason, on that trip, I decided I was done physically. Something convicted me to where I told her, I'm like, you know what? On this trip, we've got every chance in the world to have sex all the time without worrying about anything. And I said, no, we're done. We're engaged. Let's wait. God was convicting me in some way, shape, or form, even in the midst of the, you know, fakeness that I was. Because I would get up on Sunday morning and I would sing on the stage, you know, at church or whatever, and then go home in that evening, get with my girlfriend and be doing all the kinds of things that we shouldn't have been doing. And so I decided on that trip that, you know, I'm done. We're going to wait. We're going to wait until we get married, and it's going to, and, you know, I think maybe in some ways I was thinking it's time to grow up. So once I said that, something changed for her, because she started drifting and drifting and drifting away. And it became harder and harder to get a hold of her sometimes when I was at school during the week. And, you know, it was, there was a clear something different in our relationship with her. And there was something in me where I lost trust. And I don't know if I fully trusted her anyway. And I don't know why. Like, there was nothing she ever did in our relationship that made me go, yep, I can't trust her. But there was just this overwhelming feeling that I could never shake the whole time we were dating, to where there was something that I didn't wholeheartedly, 100% completely trust her. And that's tough. That's tough to have a relationship like that. And so fast forward from that trip in June, we get back from that trip, and she was super, super distant. Now we fast forward to August 13th, 1999, day I'll never forget. It was Friday the 13th, ironically enough, and I get home from college. I left early that morning from Pittsburgh and drove home, and this was in the last quarter of school. So I was like trying to finish up my degree here. I'm working on my portfolio and all these kinds of things. I needed to be focused on school, but I wasn't. I was focused on my fiance. And so we were supposed to go out that night, and I couldn't get a hold of her. Couldn't find her. Drove over to her house. She wasn't there. So I start freaking out a little bit because of my trust issue. So I start driving around, and I actually found her at the bowling alley. And this is where her mom works, and it's a Barberton bowling alley, and her car's there. And I'm like, all right. She wasn't answering my pages. Yes, there were pagers. We didn't have cell phones. It is what it is. And she wouldn't call me back. So I walk in and look for her. And I'll never forget this. I walk around the corner down in the bar area, because her mom was a bartender. And I walk around the corner, and she's sitting on this dude's lap. And she's got just like, you know, a tank top on. She was, you know, had like skin tight clothes, like dressed to the hilt kind of thing. Like she hadn't dressed up, quote, dressed up like that. I mean, she looked like she was going to the club. And she's sitting on this dude's lap, and he's got his hand in places that they didn't need to be in, that made me extremely angry and wanted to hurt him. And the look when she looked at me and caught my eye, and I knew what was happening right then and there. She didn't really have to say anything, but I knew what was going on. You know, the way she's sitting on this dude's lap wasn't like, oh, I just fell. Like, no. And so she, you know, she looks at me, and I didn't really know what to say. So, because my heart sank into my stomach, I said, we need to talk. And she goes, okay. And so we walked outside, and we went upstairs, and, you know, I was like, what's going on? You know, and I said, don't you love me anymore? And she couldn't look at me in the eye. She couldn't look at me, and she's just looking at the ground, and she goes, I don't know. I don't know. And I didn't know what to think. I didn't even know what to say. And she had a ring on that I had saved for a year and a half. And that was hard. We ended up breaking up, obviously. I got the ring back. And that was a rough night. I didn't sleep that night, and I didn't sleep for the next couple of days, to be honest. And I went into a pretty deep depression for about 6 months, where I really didn't sleep very well. I couldn't eat. Just stare at the ceiling at night because my head would just spin and go and go and go. And that pit in my stomach didn't go away. I lost like 15 pounds, and it's pretty pathetic. But what that time did was that gave me time to reflect back on what was my life all about? Like, what is all this? What is happening? And so when things are falling apart, that's when you really, unfortunately for all of us, our prayer life gets really intense when life sucks, right? And so obviously I was praying a ton, and it was at that time that I decided to fall back on everything that I learned growing up in church, and falling back on that and saying, okay, God, where are you now? Because I need you. And so I need to figure this out. And what God was showing me then was the problem was me, not him, and not everybody else. The problem was me, and that I had never put my full heart into my relationship with him, which is why this relationship that I put so much into fell apart, because it wasn't based in him. It wasn't grounded in him. It wasn't based in any of the things that I knew better to do. And it fell apart. And so I started getting a little more involved in the college class here at the church. I was part of like helping that start back up, I suppose, because it had gone away for a while. And so I was part of that, and that was cool. And God was showing me some things, and I tried dating a couple other girls, and it was just like stupid. And so 6 months go by, and I got a job. Even in the midst of all of this, I graduated from Art Institute with honors somehow. Somehow my head was able to still get around my artwork and get out of there, and I got a job at an ad agency, and that was going great. So I I just decided I wasn't going to be dating anybody for a while. I don't need to date anybody. I know what I want. I know what I don't want in a girl, and I just don't want to worry about it right now. I just kind of started focusing on my relationship with God as much as I could, and just getting my job set and whatever with girls. But I was still in this like depression and in this funk. And so my sister was in her senior year of high school, and all I did was go to work and come home, and go to work and come home. And I would hang out with some of my friends from church and stuff like that, and they did their best to keep my head up. And that's where Christian friends really come in. Let me just tell you, if it wasn't for my Christian friends during that 6 to 8 months that were the only voice of reason when I had none, because I had none, I wasn't thinking straight. And luckily, some of my Christian friends were, and they were there to support me the whole time. And I don't know if I would have gotten through all of it without them. And Josh Harris was one of them, for sure. And so, come January, year 2000, my sister's in a play at school, and she's like, hey, our sound man and our lighting guy quit. We need somebody to run sound and lights. Why don't you come up and do that in the evenings instead of just sitting at home and sulking, basically, is what she was saying. And I'm like, fine, whatever. So I go up and start doing that. And that was cool. Give me something to do. And it was just about every day. And so Joanne starts bringing one of her friends up to the booth to talk to me. And her name was Valerie Croft. And she was smoking hot. And so that was good. But her and I seemed to like really get along really well, but I had zero confidence in myself, none. And so they would come up and would talk to me and stuff. And Joanne kept telling me, you need to call Val. You need to call Val. And I'm like, okay, Val was like homecoming queen. She was the captain of the soccer team, the girls' soccer team. She, like every dude in Barberton wanted Val Croft, and I'm like, art school band guy, why in the world would this girl want to go out with me at all? You know what I mean? And that's how I felt about myself, at least. And so finally I just called her to shut my sister up, quite frankly. I'm like, fine, I'll call her. So I call her, and we ended up talking for like 3 hours the first night. She did most of the talking, to be honest, but she was coming off of a really bad relationship as well. And so in some ways we were a rebound for each other. But we had both dated a couple of idiots, if you will, before and realized it. No, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want somebody like that. I don't want this. Like, we both knew what we wanted in a relationship. And so I asked her out, and I'm like, we'll see. And so we went ice skating. On our first date, we went ice skating. We went out to eat, and we went ice skating. I didn't do the typical movie thing, because you don't get to know somebody when you go to a movie, because you sit there and watch a movie. You don't talk. So we went ice skating. I can ice skate really well. I quasi-played hockey a little bit, and so I could ice skate really well. And I was my intent was like, well, maybe she won't be able to ice skate, and I'll have to hold her up the whole time. You know what I'm saying? So she could actually ice skate fairly decently, but so that part didn't really work. But I did kind of hold hands a little bit with her to keep her up, because I could still skate better than her, and I could skate backwards and all those things. And we just talked the whole time. And funny enough, in that first conversation with her, on our first date, I found out where she stood with God. And that wasn't my intent, but I did find that out. I found out that she had gotten saved just a few months prior to us dating, and it was crazy. And our relationship just sort of went from there. And honestly, like 2 months in, I'm like, I'm gonna marry this girl. And the reason I knew that is because, going back to trust, with the girl I was dating before, and the whole Friday the 13th thing and all of that stuff, there was a trust factor there that I couldn't pin. I couldn't put my finger on it. But when it came to Val, and her and I started dating, my favorite thing about my wife, my favorite value in her, is trust. And that I can wholeheartedly, 100%, trust her. Even if we're apart for a couple of days or 3 or 4 days, which we have been when I've gone on mission trips and things like that, there's not a worry in my brain, not even 1 ounce in my heart, of not trusting her. And you can't put a price tag on that. And God certainly put her in my life just for me. No question about it. And from that moment on, when I started dating Val, that fall, we went on a college class retreat. I told you we'd gotten into the college class, and it was at that retreat that I realized God was starting to put me back together. And I remember at that retreat, I can't tell you what the guy was speaking on, and I can't tell you what the subject was or even what day it was. But I remember the time I was standing off to the left side of the little tiny amphitheater thing that we were in, and where the guy was speaking, and he had everybody's heads bowed and eyes closed and all that. And I remember committing to God right there and going, God, I've tried doing this my way, and it's blown up in my face. It was fun for a time, but it blew up in my face. And I don't want to try to do it my way anymore. God, take all of me, not just some of me, take all of me and do what you want. I want to be used, and I'm willing to go anywhere, do whatever it is that you want me to do, God. And that may have been the actual moment I got saved. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But that was the moment I wholeheartedly gave myself to God. And he's really taken control from there. Because all prior to that, I was first. I put myself first, my desires, my needs, my wants first. And if you live your life that way, it's going to fall apart. The rug is going to get ripped out from under you, and God is going to have to pick you up and put you back together. And luckily, the grace of God saved me from making some other really stupid decisions. I mean, with that other girl, there were a couple pregnancy scares. There were a couple of things that had happened in there that my life could have completely taken a turn for the worse into an event that would have been permanent and permanently ruined things moving forward. But God got a hold of me because I was willing to say, Lord, I'm done doing it my way. I'm done putting me first. I'm done putting me first. it's time to put you first. And from that point on, things started falling in place a little bit better. It wasn't all pie in the sky, and it wasn't perfect or sunshines and rainbows and all of that stuff. There's still been some junk, and the stuff with that previous girl still, the scar is still there, and the wound in some ways is still open to this day, because 15 years later, something like that you still don't completely heal from. And God has used that to make me a better youth pastor. I can talk with students and go, I know exactly how you're feeling. You're thinking this, this, and this, and your stomach's doing this, and your brain won't shut off. And I know, because I've been there and I've been through it, and it sucks. But at the same time, God has used that event and those things in my life so that I can reach other people, and help students, and the amazing things that God has been able to do through my discomfort and my pain to help other people is nothing short of amazing. And it's because I came to a turning point in my life where I had to put Him first and me second. I'm Jason Knight, and I am second.